The suspect in the Quebec City mosque attack is alleged to have expressed support for far-right ideologies. Similar voices are becoming more active in Canada. The Soldiers of Odin is one of them. The organization first sprang up in Finland in 2015. It was in response to the influx of refugees heading to Europe.
We'll be coming to the end, we'll meet up again, we'll walk up to the next one, do the same thing, come in the other direction.
The group patrols the streets, it says, to protect local citizens. But others say the Soldiers of Odin is really just anti-immigrant. There are now several chapters across Canada, one of them in Quebec City. A Vice journalist spent some time with them recently. Ben Makuch was there when the Soldiers of Odin joined known far-right groups in a so-called anti-radical Islam protest outside Quebec's National Assembly. I sat down with Makuch earlier in Toronto. Ben, so nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Thanks for having me.
That's quite the documentary.
Thank you.
And it starts in Quebec City, which is where we just saw this horrible shooting in the mosque. What did you think when you saw that?
Well, I think one thing that really struck me about my time in Quebec City looking at this specific group was just how much that climate of anti-Islam was growing. And at this particular rally that was featured in the documentary, it's an anti-radical Islam rally. And it became pretty clear that it wasn't anti-radical Islam, it was just anti-Islam.
You know, they say that they're helping old ladies and shoveling snow and so on. And they are, it seems. Mm-hmm. But this patrolling Muslim neighborhoods, what's the goal there? Like, do they explain why they're doing that?
Judging by a lot of their message boards and the people I spoke with, they are legitimately, to their minds, very afraid of the Muslim community coming and altering their society. They're so deeply afraid of Sharia law. To them, it's a show of force, I think. I think it could be nothing else. I mean, this is similar to the way a lot of political groups have operated in the past. You know, wearing certain insignias, wearing certain colored shirts, and going into neighborhoods that you don't like or that you don't agree with, and showing your presence. And I think that's what it is, if we're really boiling it down, because logically, why would you go to a Muslim neighborhood in Quebec, or any neighborhood in Quebec for that matter, Quebec City that is, when this is a city that has historically low crime rates? This is not a city in disarray or burning. This is a pretty beautiful city. So why are you doing it? Why are you going to that specific community in particular? To help them? I mean...
What was the thing that was the most alarming in both BC and in Quebec City?
Two things. One, you know, my grandfather's Polish, fought in the Polish army, fought the Nazis. And I have a problem with neo-Nazism, and I have a problem with Nazism, just like I think most Canadians. And to see this group, when I asked their leaders, were openly coordinating with a group like Atalante that has connections to that kind of thinking, that I found very alarming.
Who is Atalante?
Atalante's a right-wing extremist group. A lot of their members are connected to neo-Nazism and skinhead thinking. I know that right now openly they say they're not, but it's well documented that this group is involved some very far-right thinking. I mean, it doesn't take your imagination to look at their symbol. There's a thunderbolt, and it looks a lot like an SS thunderbolt.
Atalante, est-ce qu'il vient ici?
Ils m'ont appelé tantôt, ils vont me rappeler, ils devaient venir, mais ils vont venir, c'est sûr, dans la journée, mais exactement, mais ceux qui viennent à m'attendre, je ne le savais pas. Ah, ben, ok. Ils m'appellent.
Sérieux?
Hey, Raph.
Dave's talking to Atalante, right-wing extremists who take the protest to the next level. Some of their members have been convicted of violent attacks in the past.
Puis si Atalante s'en vient ici, eux autres vont se sauver à la course.
So to me, that's when I thought this is a little bit more connected and organized than I thought it was. The second one was when I actually put this to one of their leaders. I said, you know, do you realize, and I laid out all the things I've been saying to you, do you realize when you do this, it doesn't take much for me to say, like, you are very much connected to these far-right neo-Nazi thinking.
Why do you continue to make it so clear for someone like me to draw parallels to those exact same types of groups and then say, no, we're not racists?
Well, that's the thing, we aren't. Like, we're definitely not racist.
It wasn't so long ago that there were groups like that in Canada, the United States, that if they were out saying these things, they would be immediately shut down by the public. And you haven't seen that with the Soldiers of Odin.
So what do you think's going on that so many people are joining and that they seem to be prospering?
You know, I think there's a big response right now, and I don't want to wade too much into the American presidential election, but I think there's definitely a response right now to political correctness and liberalism. And I think that you have people who have right-wing perspectives that are being alienated by it, thinking that they're being demonized or made the enemy. And I think that pushes people to the fringe. But at the same time, you also have ISIS and these groups that are committing horrible acts of terrorism, and they're searing into people's minds. You know, one thing I kept hearing, why did I join the Soldiers of Odin? People said, well, I kept seeing, you know, these massacres in the Middle East. I saw women being beheaded and these videos. And it was interesting because I used to hear and used to read about members of Islamic State, young members, looking at Abu Ghraib and being disgusted by it and doing something about it. And I think you're seeing similar reactions to, albeit smaller, to ISIS and all these attacks are happening abroad. It's shocking. It's horrific. And I think mixed in with the refugee crisis, where we're seeing more immigrants from the Middle East, there's an ability to be afraid of them.
A number of the soldiers that you talked to referred to Sharia law and that they had to get organized to stop Sharia law from coming to Canada. Like, that seems to be a pretty common thread.
It's a very common thread.
What did you think of that?
I think that I've been looking at this kind of thing for a very long time from the perspective of a national security reporter, and the threat of that is very minimal. And the interesting thing is a lot of them were quoting news sources saying, no, I saw videos of refugees saying, I'm coming to Canada and I'm going to push for Sharia law.
It's a big issue in the alt-right groups in the United States as well,
Exactly.
that Sharia law is coming and we have to organize to stop that.
And it's the fear of the Muslim hordes. That's almost how they describe it. And it's not something that's based, as far as my research shows, in fact.
So where is this information coming from? To them, do you think?
You know, I don't want to say fake news, but I want to say discreditable news sources. You know, it started with ISIS. I started seeing people quoting these very bizarre news sources, not recognizing them. And then since the election, it's just gone up. I mean, we saw on Sunday there was fake news sources promoting that the attack on the Quebec mosque was done by 2 Syrian refugees. This was gaining momentum, so much so that the spokesperson of the president actually said, you know, this is why we're shutting down refugees into the United States. It doesn't take much.
We condemn this attack in the strongest possible terms. It's a terrible reminder of why we must remain vigilant and why the president is taking steps to be proactive rather than reactive when it comes to our nation's safety and security.
Did you get any feedback from the Soldiers of Odin after?
I don't think they're happy about it.
What have you heard?
I think they think I misrepresented them. I think they think that I'm a leftist, or at least that's what they've been saying. I mean, you know as well as I do, when you're in the occupation of journalism, I mean, you're not really here to make friends, you're here to report stories. You know, we're all adults, we're all involved in this, in the world, in society. When I come to talk to you as a journalist and I never misrepresented who I was or what I did, you know, it's on the record, we're talking about this stuff. You're on camera.
Thanks so much, Ben.
Thanks for having me.